UFOs, Unidentified Flying Objects. Scientists, researchers, even military personnel and astronauts have been discussing them for years. Some people swear they've seen, photographed, and filmed them. But all too often, the documents remain secret. In recent months, however, some major governments have begun to make part of their files on the unidentified flying objects public. France began declassification in March 2007, followed by Great Britain in May 2007 and Ecuador in May 2008. In the same period, the Vatican gave its opinion on the matter. Padre Josè Gabriel Funes released a significant and surprising statement. A belief in the existence of extraterrestrials does not go against the Catholic faith. Of the secret documents that are now accessible to the wider public, the Ecuadorian material is perhaps the most significant and the most fascinating. And soon other Latin American countries may take the same step. The extraordinary change in the Ecuadorian government's stance on UFOs is due above all to the work of investigative journalist Jaime Rodriguez, thanks to his tireless research and his programs broadcast from the Ecuadorian TV channel Ecuavisa. His achievement, made together with the head of state Rafael Correa, is just the latest step in a long journey.
It took me 22 years, from 1983 to 2005, to try to explain to the military that the UFO phenomenon should go from speculative to official. That is, if government authorities give their opinions on many issues, such as volcanic eruptions, climate problems and agriculture, why couldn't there be representatives of the government who discuss this issue, which is so vital to us? Things being as they are, when Colonel Lucio Gutierrez stood for the presidency of the Republic, we managed to besiege him, so to speak, with the support of the media. And that's how he offered to make a commitment, saying to me, "Mr. Rodriguez, don't worry, because my government will be completely different." When he became president a second time, we reminded him of the promise he had made, and he confirmed his commitment. He sent us to his personal secretary, Oscar Ayerve, in Guayaquil. And we brought him an informational file on the issue and the reasons why the Ministry of Defense ought to give it special attention. And so on April the 5th, 2005, the CIFO, or the Ecuadorian Committee for the Investigation of the UFO Phenomenon, was created under the presidency of Colonel Lucio Gutierrez.
Once the committee was created, the military began to work with civilians on a convincing report aimed at persuading the government to break the seal of secrecy on the UFO documents. But there were major problems from the start. The first problem was the funds that were promised but then not granted. The civilian researchers thus decided to find their own funding.
There were 6 civilians involved, although officially there were 3 of us. The other 3 worked with us, and thus in total we had a team of 6. The 6 of us collected the money, and we spent $12,000 in 2 years before we got the dossier.
The second obstacle was the fact that military personnel were afraid of ruining their career by making official statements, since the UFO phenomenon was not taken seriously. The president had to intervene to resolve the dilemma.
Thus we succeeded in obtaining authorization from the then Minister of Defense, Lorena Escudero, which stated as follows: all military personnel may make statements with absolute freedom, and this issue will not lead to the addition of any detail on their CV that might damage their reputation. In this way, we managed to overcome the second obstacle, which was very important.
The third problem that Rodriguez and his colleagues had to overcome was also the most difficult. It directly involved the US Secret Services, who offered military personnel significant economic and career-related incentives, provided that they respected a series of obligations. Amongst these, they required that information and documents regarding UFOs should be concealed. In the meantime, Rafael Correa had been elected president of Ecuador. In March 2008, a diplomatic crisis with Colombia led Correa to discover that his secret services had been corrupted.
Y logran descubrir que había un financiamiento.
He discovered that US intelligence had secretly financed the Ecuadorian military secret services. So Correa took action. He dismissed the entire military structure directing the military secret services, and through the US Embassy, he ordered the expulsion of all the CIA officers and all those who were involved in secret work in Ecuador. This frightened the military personnel enough that they ceased to conceal information. The following week, the president called a meeting in Cosena, the National Security Council. The meeting included the Air Force commander, the Army commander, the commander of the armed forces, the head of the Joint Command, and the Minister of Defense. He invited us to this meeting, and in front of us he said, "The commanders of the Air Force, Army, and Armed Forces must completely deregulate information on the UFO phenomenon. We don't want anything about this issue to remain secret in our country. The documents say that Jaime Rodriguez is authorized to enter any military structure in the country to conduct investigations and gather testimony on any case concerning the UFO phenomenon."
Thanks to this authorization, over 400 deregulated UFO videos are now available to researchers in Ecuador. Most of them were recorded by civilians. In fact, before President Rafael Correa took a new sensational stance on the subject, the military confiscated all such videos. The material was regularly classified, and the public was denied access to it. The statement made by the Chief of Air Staff, Colonel Zanoni Garcia Dominguez, confirms the reason behind this situation.
Once we have obtained the analyses and information, we'll be able to transmit all these documents officially.
These are the first films of unidentified flying objects to be declassified by the Ecuadorian government. While celebrating a birthday party at the home of the former Vice President of the Republic, Luis Parodi, guests notice an anomalous object hovering in the sky. The video was recorded in 1992. In the images, we can clearly see the mysterious craft's orange-colored glow and its tubular shape. This video, also recorded in the 1990s, shows an amazing glowing platform hovering in the skies over Quito. The video was recorded by Francisco Navas and his sister from the terrace of their home. The videos may be the most fascinating part of the UFO material, But the direct testimony made by military personnel is of even greater importance. 44 statements by military personnel were released to the CEIFO. Today, they're part of the public domain on the internet and YouTube. These personnel are still in the military. They have experienced the events described in person whilst in service. There can be no doubt as to the veracity of these statements.
While we were executing a flight maneuver during an instrumental exercise at the base in Malta, we saw a light moving towards the Cruceta sector, near the city of Cruceta. We notified the control tower that unknown traffic was approaching. So when we got closer, at about 2,000 or 3,000 feet, we veered left to get a better look at the lights we had in front of us. Right then, the two lights moved into formation with incredible speed and flew off toward the Cruceta Mountains, near the city of Cruceta. We flew over the sector, but we were unable to locate them. We had begun our descent from 11,000 feet, and I reckon that we had descended by about 2,000 feet when I saw a very bright light, more or less around, how can I put it, at a position of about 5 o'clock, a bit lower. I was in the back cockpit of the airplane, and Major Enriquez was in the front cockpit. I pointed it out to him, and he saw it. Immediately afterwards, I called the control tower to verify whether there was an airplane, to which the tower responded that there was no traffic. We thought it was an airplane, but in the moment we veered toward this bright light, we saw that the object turned toward us and divided into two very intense lights, on a collision course with us. So the pilot in the front cockpit, the major, executed a maneuver to the left, and while we were turning, we continued to watch what the object was doing, and we saw that it stopped in mid-air and moved down toward the mountains. We tried to fly over a small mountain, and the object crossed us on this side, and while we tried to cross it from the other side, it disappeared without a trace. We scanned the area, but there was no trace of it. We thought it was an airplane, but the movements this light made were very fast, very erratic. An airplane can't do that. For example, turn and stop in mid-air and descend diagonally. No airplane can do that. The instruments we have enable us to identify the objects moving in airspace clearly. We can clearly distinguish a commercial airplane from a military airplane, or from extraneous objects. We have a lot of confidence in the capability of these instruments. Therefore, the information we have available, not just our information, but also that coming from abroad, in particular from the United States, which is a very qualified source of information, makes me confident that we are dealing with an area in which there are unidentified flying objects. In real terms, these are extraterrestrial objects, and I'm sure of it. We share the universe with other beings.
Statements of such significance had never before been made publicly by military officials in active service, and they show the level of importance of the order that President Correa had given to the commanders of the armed forces on June the 25th, 2007, with official document number 2007-0439 CSN. These events, combined with Jaime Rodriguez's role as a television journalist, began to change civilian society's attitude towards the UFO phenomenon in Ecuador.
We've noticed that there's a greater sense of maturity among us now. The population has a more mature attitude towards the UFO phenomenon. This stimulates us to move our work into the analytical part of the subject, which is what we really need to focus on now. Initially, civilians seemed to be afraid to call me and say, "I've recorded a video." Now they do, and with new vigor. People are participating much more now. I get a lot of emails stating, "I've taken this photo, I've recorded this video." That is, we've noted an increase in cooperation on the part of the civilian community regarding testimony and evidence. This is the sense of maturity I'm talking about. So the sensationalist press, which has often used this subject to sell magazines or other things, has suddenly gone quiet, completely.
This change began to yield its first fruits. The example that Rodriguez describes is emblematic.
I'd had a lot of problems with the airport's radar director. He was always annoyed with me because he didn't believe in UFOs. So this gentleman saw that I was leaving and he called me. "Hey, Jaime Rodriguez, come here." And he said to me, "Seeing as you're interested in these things, have a look at this photo. It was taken here, yesterday, at about 6 p.m. And he gave me this photo. This is evidence. It was taken by the radar director at Guayaquil Airport. Even some young people from a famous Ecuadorian music group called Los Chaucha Kings contacted me. Their drummer, Diego Miño, had taken a photo of it. The same object, photographed by 2 or 3 people at the same hour, on the same day, is even stronger evidence for us. It's a substantial change in behavior for those who had denied and opposed the matter before. Just think, now they're contributing, they're providing evidence. This is a real change in attitude, caused by this, how can I put it, this openness in deregulating the information on UFOs in Ecuador.
The photo shows a clearly disc-shaped object above the Guayaquil City Airport buildings. We can easily make out the UFO's hexagonal structure. For a number of years, unidentified flying objects have often been detected near erupting volcanoes, or those that are about to become active.
We have a volcanic chain, part of which is active, and the other part returning to activity. Tungurahua attracts media interest with TV stations placing their cameras there to film the volcano each time it erupts. And they show these objects twirling in the sky. TV stations get involved in this phenomenon, filming the UFOs flying around the volcanoes.
During an eruption of the volcano Tungurahua, the main national channel in Ecuador, Teleamazonas, films the extraordinary spectacle. Suddenly, a glowing object appears above the volcanic crater and then disappears after just a few seconds. At one point, the mysterious glowing craft reappears. Cameramen Marco Ramirez and Julio Avilan capture the incredible scene on film. The object is moving. The video cameras are set on tripods. Shortly afterwards, flashes of light similar to lightning begin to appear. When slowing down the images, we can clearly distinguish these flashes of light. They seem to come out of light spheres. Then, a series of even larger and brighter flashes appears at the mouth of the volcano. In the still, one of the flashes seems to come from 2 side-by-side sources, while other smaller flashes appear above them. Here, we can see 3 light spheres, and only one of them emits a flash. Later, telemetric analyses conducted in the United States have revealed that the object inside the crater had to have been at least 30 meters in diameter. But what sort of technology enables a flying object to stop at the mouth of an erupting volcano? Another sighting confirms the link between unidentified flying objects and volcanic areas. This time, it was filmed by a truly exceptional witness. The event took place near Ecuador's capital, Quito. Here, the wind can reach up to 140 kilometers per hour. A family is on an outing in the countryside when something attracts their attention. An unusual object hovering in the air despite the strong wind. Filming the event is Ecuador's chief of police.
Bueno, estamos en la cima del Pichincha, continuamos y hemos encontrado algún objeto que está volando aquí entre las nubes. No sabríamos decir qué es. Podría ser un ovni. Y vamos a filmarle para mandarle a Jaime Rodríguez. Vamos a congelarle la imagen un momentito ahí. ¿Qué creen que sea? ¿Un globo? Pues desapareció la imagen.
That same night, the staff of Quito's Ecuavisa television channel received several calls notifying them of the presence of a mysterious, brightly shining craft right above the crater. The station sent a team straight away to film what was happening. The following is their report, which was later broadcast.
Now we'll go back to the news we gave you at the beginning of the program due to the large number of calls we've received. The peace was disturbed at Quito tonight by a phenomenon that has not yet been explained. Here we see the images recorded earlier. A bright, blinking yellow and red-colored light appeared and disappeared in the sky south of the capital. The phenomenon was seen from various neighborhoods in Quito, and residents, primarily in the southern area, have been calling our staff continually to tell us that they saw it. Aquavisa's video cameras recorded the images you're seeing now.
By analyzing the images, we can clearly see that the light emanating from the UFO even shines through the clouds. The mysterious object's varying luminosity and its ability to hover proved that it couldn't be a headlight on an aeroplane or any other conventional craft. Quito was once more the setting for another incredible sighting. It's another important declassified case, which joins the already extensive CEIFO archives. On September the 5th, 2007, Dr. Antonio Osorio witnessed a very special phenomenon. A flotilla.
I was sitting down, having lunch and chatting with Patrizia about the patients, as we always do. Patrizia came back in, looked out of the window and said, "Doctor, look, what could that be?" I went to the window and I also saw some, they looked like aeroplanes or balloons. They seemed to me to be more like aerostats, but I was amazed to see so many of them. I ran out, called my wife and told her to come and see. It was a really strange thing. And I asked her where my video camera was. I ran to get it, and we went out onto the terrace to watch the scene.
We can see a classic flotilla composed of about 57 white spheres in the sky. The video camera has recorded a sound similar to the rattling of a train in their presence. CEIFO researchers checked whether the Military Aviation Command or the Civil Aviation Office had authorized the release of aerostats or other similar objects. But their answer was negative.
I thought that there were no fewer than 50 of them. At first sight, they were moving forward in a uniform way, but once I filmed them, it appeared that they were brightly shining objects and apparently they moved very quickly.
I saw two objects fly by, flat and oval-shaped. Curiosity drove me to go to the window, and I said, "Doctor, come look at this. What is it?" And we stood in front of the window, and when we saw what it was, we noted that there were about 50 of them, so many of them.
Dr. Antonio Osorio had always been skeptical about the UFO phenomenon. He would never have imagined that one day he'd be involved in such an event.
No, I didn't believe them because they've always said there are people who know how to edit videos in such a way as to make us believe they're real, but they aren't. But now I believe it. I have faith in it.
This video is part of the UFO material that was declassified thanks to President Rafael Correa's order. Therefore, the authenticity of these videos has been confirmed by the Presidency of the Republic of Ecuador. The extraordinary events which have taken place in this country, in particular the brave historical stance taken by President Rafael Correa, open up a new phase, both in the history of this country and of humanity itself, something that was unthinkable until just a few years ago. Will other governments do the same before the reality of this situation outweighs their decisions? The wave of UFO sightings, which has been increasing constantly for several years, is particularly concentrated in certain countries, especially Mexico. But South America also boasts a remarkable number of cases. These cases are often supported by photographs and videos. But that's not all. In certain countries, Brazil in particular, there are legends telling of contact between indigenous people and beings from the stars. And many researchers have become involved in investigating the matter. Padre Josè Gabriel is the best-known Brazilian investigator following the UFO phenomenon.
No Brasil, as questões casuísticas.
The best-known cases in Brazil, even on an international level, are fairly specific, distinct cases. For example, UFOs in the Amazon area are a matter of frequent discussion, and Brazilian ufologists have been examining the cases for some time.
In fact, a constant alien presence in the wild and nearly unexplored Amazon area is something of a legend. An ancient memory of contact with beings from the stars has been passed down in the myths and traditions of many cultures that some consider primitive. The Kayapo tribe is among these witnesses.
We have indigenous nations, and this is an incredible thing. Entire indigenous populations who base their rituals and folk celebrations on the supposition that they are of extraplanetary origins. For example, the indigenous people of Upper Xingu believe that they descend from a mythical being called Bep Kororoti, who came to Earth decades, centuries ago, according to the cultural traditions of that people, leaving an extraterrestrial legacy. They believe that they belong to a civilization from beyond Earth, and that one day they will be brought back to their homeland.
In remembrance of their ancient descent from the stars, the Kayapo celebrate a rite in which one of them personifies the mythical Bep Kororoti, the being from space who taught them how to farm and many other things. The costume used in the ceremony is made of woven vegetable fibers, and its shape suggests more modern clothing. The headdress clearly simulates a helmet, and the rest resembles a pressurized suit. Is this just an ancient myth, or could it be something else? However you choose to view it, it's an intriguing story for our times. One of the most important ufological cases that took place in the Amazon area directly involved the Brazilian military. The operation, known as Plato, took place in 1977 in the state of Pará, within the Amazon area, and it achieved extraordinary results. The military became involved after a remarkable number of sightings and contacts began to alarm the population and the local authorities.
We reached such a serious level that the local authorities informed the Para-state government, which in turn requested that the Brazilian Air Force intervene. So an investigation was ordered. As a consequence, Operation Plato was launched in September and ended in December 1977. It produced about 2,000 pages of documents, of which we have over 200 filed in folders. It also produced 500 photographs of flying saucers, including some taken from close range. We have about 24 of those. Operation Plato also produced at least 16 hours of footage showing flying saucers over the Amazon area rivers. Brazilian ufologists, and in particular UFO magazine, have none of this material.
Operation Plato, which means saucer, as in flying saucer, was closed down by the Brazilian military command in December 1977. The reason for this was puzzling, to say the least.
It was closed because something happened, the very thing that the military was looking for: contact with extraterrestrial beings. That was one of their objectives, to attempt to establish contact with the forms of intelligence behind the phenomenon. They didn't think it could happen. When it happened, to put it simply, when there was direct contact between an official of the Brazilian Air Force and the extraterrestrial beings, which happened around mid-December 1977, the Brazilian Air Force simply understood that it might lose control of the situation, and as a consequence, it closed down Operation Plato for good.
Gabriel first received confirmation of these extraordinary events from Colonel Uranga Hollanda, the mission's commander. Colonel Hollanda mysteriously took his own life sometime later. The incredible results achieved by this military operation pushed the ufologists to attempt to persuade the government to release the documentation it had produced.
Today, our mission in Brazil aims to get that material finally declassified. We've already had confirmation from various military sources. At the moment, it mainly comes from Brigadier José Carlos Pereira, former commander of the Brazilian Aerospace Defense Command.
Commander Pereira not only confirmed the truth behind this operation and the classified documents, but also gave an assessment of it from a strategic and military perspective.
The reports are kept in the archive and classified as secret. Now, if I were to say, during Operation Plato there was this or that contact, I'd be violating the secrecy imposed by law on my country. I can't do it. I can't reveal it. Otherwise, I'd be committing a crime. But I can say, please change the law. Please make a new law. The UFO matter does not constitute a threat of war to any country. It doesn't threaten anyone's safety and doesn't cause panic amongst the population. It doesn't even threaten people's privacy. I see no reason why it can't be completely opened and divulged.
Pereira's analysis even made news on the international ufological scene.
There is an extensive amount of evidence and witness accounts, not just in Brazil, but throughout the world. This evidence is quite valid and carries great weight.
Commander Pereira's words are supported by the never-ending stream of cases, which continues to appear with increasing frequency. In the rest of South America, the videos and photographs that have been produced are certainly not as numerous as in Mexico, but the material in existence provides researchers and scientists with increasingly extraordinary material for their investigations. We often hear of frequent UFO presence near volcanoes. The incredible object we're seeing in this video was filmed by an Ecuadorian government official. Once again, the video was recorded near Ecuador's volcanic chain.
Miren eso, qué fantástico, qué belleza, es como una araña, qué belleza, se me perdió, ahí arriba, miren eso, es una nave preciosa, es una cosa fantástica. Sí, parece, es como una... Tiene luces hacia los lados y un eje central. Se mueve muy lentamente. Se mueve súper lento, pero parece que está parqueado ahí. Es hermoso. Hemos estado yendo a ver al volcán Tungurahua y ahora nos topamos con esto. Es hermoso. Miren, no es un avión, no es nada. Qué belleza, se va alejando poquito a poquito. Bueno, eso es todo, creo que. Vamos a ver hasta el volcán Tungurahua a ver qué pasa. Pero miren, es como una araña de sal, algo así. Vemos otro de estos objetos. Son extraños, tienen una luz central y unas luces laterales y son intermitentes esas luces. Es que se me pierden. Están flotando.
In the end, the witness and his friends reached the panoramic spot in front of the volcano Tungurahua, their original destination before the sighting.
Después de esta alegría tan bonita que hemos tenido y esta sorpresa del ovni, estamos ya en el sitio para ver el volcán.
It wasn't the first time that this type of UFO had been sighted and filmed. In the 1990s, Victor Chuluiza sighted and filmed this flying object in Ecuador. It looks very similar to the one we've just seen.
When I realized that they actually didn't seem to be airplanes or balloons, I felt a thrill, and I understood that it really wasn't what I had expected. It was a UFO. It must have been 200, 180 meters from here. It was closer, and so it looked larger, and I don't know, maybe the video camera helped me to put it into focus enough to see the image clearly, and I believe it was thanks to the video camera. And one thing that really caught my attention was that it made no noise. I might have thought it was an airplane, a helicopter, but I couldn't hear any noise. And that was what made me get my video camera and start filming. But when I saw it through the video camera, when I saw it from close up, I didn't see the typical saucer shape, but rather the shape of a sort of star, a very particular shape that I had never seen before. I got the impression that it was something out of the ordinary, something that I would never have imagined seeing. It really struck me, the fact that I saw something that's so rarely sighted. It seems natural to me. I mean, in such an immense universe, the third planet can't possibly be the only inhabited one. I've always believed it, and I have to be honest, I've always wanted to see a flying object. And when at last I was able to see one, it was a dream come true.
Another similar craft was subsequently filmed in Mexico. The first was sighted and filmed in Tikal, Yucatan on the 7th of August 2004.
Órale, sí, lo estás filmando. Carito. Síguelo. clarito, mira eso. Sí, es que tú quédate filmando, yo sigo por allá, por los árboles, ¿sabes? Sigue filmando, voy.
Another similar flying object was filmed in Tikal, Mexico on the 12th of December 2004. On the 30th of August 2000, a seminary student was filming the celebration of Mass in Ecuador when he noticed a strange object moving in the sky outside. Initially, he filmed it through the church windows. Then he went out, and the object could still be seen in the sky.
Oh, mira, huevón. Baja un poco. ¡Qué emoción!
The agitation and concern in the witnesses' voices can be heard in the audio recorded during this unusual aerial spectacle. Nowadays, we're accustomed to seeing security cameras positioned at various points in our cities. They're part of the scenery, and nobody notices them anymore. In Ecuador, they call them eagle eyes. We know the cameras are there to watch out for accidents or criminal acts. But in Cuenca, Ecuador, they recorded a rather unusual scene.
En Cuenca, es una ciudad al sur de Ecuador.
In Cuenca, a city in the mountains south of Ecuador, there are surveillance cameras in the streets. One of these filmed some children pointing to the sky from the terrace of their house. The person operating the surveillance camera zoomed in on the children and moved it upwards to see what they were pointing to in space. By doing so, it located and filmed a UFO moving towards the Cajas lagoons. While the UFO was being filmed, a second object appeared at the same point, and they both went toward Cajas. Here, the same thing that happened in other cases repeated itself. The UFO stopped, hovering. When the children pointed to it, and someone there began to film it, the object started to move. I think that there was some form of intelligence inside it.
By analyzing the images, we can note how the first object begins to move the moment the video camera pans over it. This becomes even clearer when the second unidentified flying object arrives to accompany the first before they fly away. The model of video camera with which these extraordinary images were recorded is very sophisticated and expensive. Peru has been the stage for remarkable UFO appearances since the 1990s. A very intense wave of sightings took place in the capital, Lima, in 1999. The videos recorded at the time caught the attention of both the media and the Peruvian public. A number of very bright, unidentified objects flying at low altitudes generated unease in Lima's population. People didn't know how to explain what was happening, and the authorities were unable to provide any clarification regarding the nature of the unknown craft.
Pero mira, los dos tienen dos rutas distintas, Rodolfo. Y mira el avión cómo se va para allá. Mira la luz cómo se prende el avión que pasa por acá arriba, mira. Claro. Y mira esa luz, qué potente. No puede ser un avión. Es muy fuerte esta luz acá.
¿Tiene 3 foquitos o me parece, Sergio?
3.
Este se ve más claro.
Mira, Catri, mira. Lo estoy grabando, está sentado. Voy a llorar. Mira, está brillando más. Catherine, está brillando más. Me estoy dando cuenta. Está acercándose más. Es la cuarta vez en esta noche. Hoy es plano, ¿no? Mira. Es una luz así como de fluorescente, así largo.
On the 20th of May 2007, a flotilla appeared in the skies over Lima, rekindling interest in the media and the Peruvian public. This is the news report broadcast on the channel ATV Noticias. It was about noon when people on the street saw this spectacular phenomenon.
Hay más de 20 platillos voladores, amigos, allá. Fíjense allá bien. Ahorita está pasando y todo el mundo está mirando.
No sé, yo no creo en los platillos voladores, pero parece.
Este extraño y sorprendente espectáculo, registrado en Lima hace 2 días, fue captado por un equipo de TV Noticias. Por más de 30 minutos se observó una diversidad de puntos blancos que iban formando figuras en el cielo. Estos avistamientos bien podrían ser estudiados por una oficina de sistema aeroespacial, como existe en países como Chile, Brasil, Argentina y México.
The event was also filmed from another point in the city. By analyzing the frames, we can clearly see the classic white spheres making up the flotilla. It doesn't happen often that people and traffic stop to witness a spectacular show of unidentified flying objects. The city of 33 in Uruguay was at the center of one of these rare cases. The episode took place when Giorgio Bongiovanni was visiting from Italy. He'd traveled there for a series of conferences regarding the presence of UFOs.
¡Ay, se paró!
Che. Filmá la gente, todo. Es interesante, mirá. No tenemos.
Ahora se empezaron a ver los otros, ¿eh?
In the video, we can clearly see numerous flying objects hovering in the clear sky. They're flying at a relatively low altitude and are easily seen by the people on the street. The object's movement clearly shows their ability to move autonomously during flight. Yet another spectacular example of this unknown form of aviation.
Some days before my visit to Uruguay, in a city called 33, some unidentified flying objects appeared, that is, extraterrestrial spaceships to us, and they stopped traffic throughout the city. It was all captured on film. There were spaceships in the sky, bright even in daylight, like white spheres. The people stopped to look out and point at them, shouting, "UFOs, UFOs!" The TV stations got it all on film.
Tarbaca is near San Jose, the capital of Costa Rica. Just before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Marvin Badia, a young carpenter, was working when he heard a strange buzzing that distracted him from his work. To his intense amazement, the young man saw that the source of the noise was about 100 meters away from him.
I was shaping this table here outside. It was very cloudy. I looked up and saw some sort of object. It was very bright. I looked at it carefully and took out my mobile phone. I saw that it was giving me time to film it, so I started to record. I called my colleague, who was working with a drill, but he didn't hear me. I called him again. I turned towards him, moving the phone, and when I turned back, the object had already gone.
The film that Marvin recorded shows a classic flying saucer hovering just a few meters from the ground. His colleague, William Rivera, didn't hear Marvin shouting over the noise of the drill he was using. Thus, he missed the extraordinary spectacle.
William, ven. William.
William Rivera assures us that Marvin was quite shaken.
No, he wouldn't calm down. He was still very, very worked up. You see, I believe that this was a UFO. I have no doubt it wasn't man-made. And why was it here? We don't know.
The movements that the craft makes and its appearance prove that it could not have been a conventional earthly vehicle. According to Marvin's description, the object was about as large as the wheel of a large tractor. It wouldn't have been large enough to hold a normal-sized person. Oscar Sierra, a ufologist from Costa Rica, explains his theory to the Teletica journalists.
It's not necessarily a driven object. It could be some sort of probe, like those that human beings sent to Titan not long ago, which were small, about 2 meters. Therefore, they aren't necessarily piloted objects. Rather, they could be some kind of surveying probe.
It's hard to say whether this is the correct explanation, but it's clear that the video recorded by Marvin Badia is among the best documents that the investigators have today. Continual sightings in South America and in the rest of the world, the creation of an official UFO investigation committee in Ecuador, the declassification of secret files in other nations such as France and England, the statements made by the Vatican, a new perception of the phenomenon in ever wider areas of civilian society. They're all signs that something is changing. Various ancient prophecies predict that change is coming to humanity. For Jaime Rodriguez, this hope is a certainty.
Absolutely. We're at the beginning of a new era. In fact, we've got a lot of responsibility. And I'm a person who truly believes, that is, I have a feeling that the predictions that the Maya made for 2012 are of great importance. And I believe that people's conscience is going to change.
Might this be true? Certainly, we can hope that humanity might soon be able to unlock the mystery of what seems to be an increasingly frequent presence. What's happening in Mexico's skies? Why is it that in the last 15 years, unidentified flying objects have flown through these skies with a frequency that seems to be steadily increasing? The number of witnesses is multiplying too, and thanks to technology, so is the number of amateur films. The media have documented these incredible episodes, and many people are now wondering what's happening in Mexico. The most organized of them are a group of researchers who have begun an unprecedented project in the history of modern ufology, systematically studying and monitoring the sky. Everything is filmed, recorded, and scientifically documented. The team's name is the Vigilantes, and their work has produced an incredible number of photographs, testimonies, and films, which are analyzed very carefully. The amount of material was so impressive that it led the researchers to think of Mexico as a true contact point. It all began with the total solar eclipse that took place in Mexico on the 11th of July 1991, coinciding with an ancient Mayan prophecy. The prophecy foretold that such an eclipse in Mexico would mark the beginning of humanity's encounter with the Lords of the Stars. It was all written in the Dresden Codex, one of the few documents that escaped the wrath of the Spanish conquistadors. But let's get back to the eclipse. On the 11th of July 1991, millions of people and hundreds of video cameras followed this spectacular astronomical event. Initially, nobody seemed to notice the presence of an anomalous aircraft hovering in the sky over Mexico City. But when reviewing the footage later, many people noted the intruder. It seemed to be made of metal that reflected the sunlight, and it was shaped like a classic flying saucer. The sighting created quite a stir, and even the TV media became involved, especially researcher and journalist Jaime Maussan. In the days following the eclipse, the staff of Televisa, one of Mexico's largest private TV networks, was flooded with videos of the mysterious aircraft. The public's curiosity grew. What exactly was the object filmed during the eclipse? Where did it come from? Could it possibly be a confirmation of the mysterious Mayan prophecy? Demetrio Feria, one of the first members of the Vigilantes, remembers that day well.
My experience began in June of 1991, before the great eclipse that took place in Mexico on the 11th of July of that year. That was when I decided to film them. I already had a video camera, and I wanted to know whether the phenomenon was real or just a bunch of lies, special effects or something like that. And luckily I managed to capture them on film. I devoted quite a bit of time to them between June and November, and I began filming them one dawn in November at 5 in the morning.
Ruben Villatoro also remembers the eclipse well. That was the moment he decided to become a vigilante.
After
the total solar eclipse on the 11th of July 1991, Jaime Maussan went on television and said that at the time of the eclipse, there were people who had filmed the UFOs with their video cameras. I decided that it was important to follow their example. I bought a video camera, and over the years, I've filmed several objects flying over Mexico City.
The event during the eclipse seemed to have opened a Pandora's box of UFO sightings. Thus, Mexico saw the beginning of one of the most intense waves of sightings in history. Without a doubt, the remarkable availability of cameras and video cameras improved the potential for sightings. But the number of sightings only began to grow exponentially after the eclipse of the 11th of July 1991. Footage from Mexico traveled around the world, amazing those who saw the videos and bringing much joy to scholars who had never had so much material to analyze. Of all the investigators, Jaime Maussan is the most responsible for having researched and disseminated the large quantity of video footage captured in Mexico by both occasional witnesses and by the Vigilantes. The idea to start this group was also his.
The Vigilantes group was Jaime's idea. He was the one to form the group, and when I arrived, it was already in existence.
The
group still exists. Its members are few, but those who have stayed are at the forefront of this research.
Today, Jaime Maussan directs and coordinates the Vigilantes' work alongside researcher Padre Josè. His videos of unidentified flying objects have circulated all around the world, generating a great deal of interest. For over 15 years, Pedro has lived the life of a near recluse in his small room due to a debilitating illness that has practically immobilized him. Despite this, Padre Josè has made some very important contributions to international ufological research from within his small world. A small window and a piece of sky are his only contact with the outside world, which he observes carefully from the first hours of the day well into the night. he's a full-time vigilante, and without a shadow of a doubt, he's one of the best.
A lot of people ask me, or wonder why most of my videos were filmed from this little window. Well, there are two reasons. First of all, I have a little window no more than 1.8 meters in length and 1 meter in height, and my visual angle is quite limited. Therefore, it's a bit difficult for me to make out these objects, and in this little space, I've managed to record everything that I've filmed to the present. The second reason is that some time ago, I was diagnosed with an illness known as progressive muscular dystrophy, which obviously gets worse with time. And now I can't leave the house like I used to. In the past, I used to film these videos from the garden or the garage. But when my health grew delicate, I was forced to stay in my room. I thought that this would limit my ability to film videos, since I didn't have the same extent of sky that I could see from the garden. However, I was greatly surprised because I realized that from here, from this little window, I've recorded the best videos I've ever shot.
Pedro is a true example of extraordinary passion and willpower. Armed with his camera, video camera, and binoculars, he has captured some of the best footage of unidentified flying objects ever filmed. His collection includes some light spheres and the famous flotillas.
Sabemos que dentro de la investigación OVNI, los objetos que más abundan son las esferas.
We know that the most common objects in UFO investigation are spheres, which can be a single white sphere or silver spheres, black, blue, red, or multicolored. Sometimes there may be only two of them, and other times we've been able to film flotillas composed of over 300 or 500 objects. Often they shift one way and the other. They interact. These are the most interesting sightings.
One of the most important videos of spheres was recorded in Mexico in 2002. The images clearly show two spheres revolving in the sky. Ordinarily, the spheres appear to be shiny and white, but in this film, the sphere's metal form is clearer than ever before. This footage confirms statements made by many other witnesses who claim to have seen similar spheres fly through the sky and suddenly change state, going from luminous to metallic. In addition to flotillas and spheres, Pedro has also filmed some unconventional flying objects of a totally unexplained appearance.
En una ocasión,
I once filmed 6 dark objects that look like watermelon seeds, like little black seeds. These 6 objects formed a shape in the sky very much like a flower with 6 petals. The strange thing is that when we zoom in, when we analyze the video, when we add filters and all the rest, we can't seem to find a structure. In other words, the objects are moving rhythmically, with an amazing synchronicity, and always keeping the same position as if they were a flower, spinning, going up and down, but always keeping the same distance, despite there being no structure between the objects.
Avia's video is the first to show an object of such a shape flying in broad daylight. Pedro Avia has filmed objects demonstrating incredible abilities that have never before been documented. Thanks to his commitment and an original filming technique, he has produced results showing that the mysterious unidentified flying objects may have features we don't yet know about, which are of extraordinary interest.
One of
the videos I consider the most important involves objects that are invisible to the naked eye and which can only be captured by using infrared vision.
Y que solamente a través de la visión infrarroja se pueden captar.
To do this, I developed a special technique using two video cameras. One films in the usual spectrum and the other films in the infrared spectrum. To use them both, I made a special rigging and placed one camera atop the other, training them on the same point. That is, the same focal distance, the same level of zoom. I frame the images so that they show the exact same thing. Therefore, what the normal camera sees is also what the infrared camera sees.
Entonces, eso es bien importante porque eso está demostrando.
This is very important because it demonstrates that there are objects moving in the sky that are invisible to the human eye, and we can't perceive their presence.
The surprising results achieved with this technique have aroused great interest in various parts of the world.
Después de que yo desarrollo esta técnica,
once I developed this technique for filming in infrared vision with both video cameras, news of it began to travel around the world.
Un grupo de franceses donde hay involucrados algunos científicos.
A French group, including some scientists, organized an investigation group and some research programs.
A mí me sorprende cuando Jaime Maussan se
I was amazed when Jaime Maussan contacted me and sent me an email informing me that they were going to create an investigation program in my name. The main program in this investigation will bear my name in honor of what I've created. They give it a prominent position on their European website, where they explain the technique I created and how it works. A few weeks ago, some people from Denmark came to make a short film, which will be submitted for a competition in a film festival connected to the UFO phenomenon.
The large number of videos that the vigilantes have recorded shows that craft are flying through our skies with characteristics and flight dynamics that differ from the conventional features of aeroplanes or helicopters. And that's not all. These videos demonstrate that systematic and continuous observation of the sky can provide interesting documentation. Quite different from accidental amateur footage, which tends to raise doubts. It's no coincidence that the vigilantes have respectable professional backgrounds.
Yo creo que el escepticismo es una parte normal en el ser humano.
I believe that skepticism is a normal part of human behavior. Many people don't believe in the existence of UFOs, and I think it depends on the simple habit of observing the sky.
Quien mira y pone sus ojos hacia arriba y empieza no a ver, sino a observar y dedica.
Those who look upwards and begin not only to see, but to observe, and dedicate time to this, will start to realize that there are presences. There are presences that have nothing to do with objects we normally see flying, like aeroplanes, helicopters, weather probes, balloons, etc.
Lo que a mí me ha llevado a volverme un vigilante.
One of the things that drove me to become a vigilante of the sky was my work as a professional architecture photographer.
Precisamente lo que es importante y lo que me ha llevado a hacer.
In particular, what was important was that it led me to take good pictures, and as a professional photographer, my knowledge of light and shadow makes a difference.
Es algo importante para poder ver a los objetos.
It's a very important factor to be able to see the objects, knowing what time of day the light helps us, when the sun literally brings out the objects.
Spheres and flotillas also make frequent appearances in the videos by Arturo Robles Gile, and they are truly spectacular. Where could these mysterious objects have come from? Some people believe they have captured the answer in a photograph. During the great wave of sightings in the 1990s, phenomena were sighted that amazed both direct witnesses and researchers. Video cameras captured flying objects capable of releasing an incredible number of spheres, giving rise to the flotilla phenomenon. At first, the classic luminous spherical objects were the ones to show this trait. Later, but still in Mexico, enormous tubular structures were sighted and filmed. Further light spheres came out of these irregularly shaped structures. This new chapter added new questions and mysterious elements to the world of ufology. Even the ufology experts can't explain these images. The objects are christened gusanos voladores, or flying worms, because of their appearance. They raise many questions. Where do they come from? What technology do they use? How can these structures appear and hover in the sky without any known flight mechanism? How can they contain and expel the number of spheres that have been filmed? A major step has been taken thanks once again to one of the vigilantes, engineer Arturo Robles Gila.
Esa mañana yo subí a la azotea, a pesar de que estaba muy nublado, subí a ver las condiciones climatológicas, cómo iban a estar para en la noche.
That morning, I went out onto the terrace, although it was very cloudy, to check the weather conditions because that night there was going to be a lunar eclipse, which is very important from a photographic point of view. At the time, in 2004, there were a number of people here repairing the building, and we all witnessed it. But I was the only one who looked up to the zenith. I don't even know why I did it, as I usually made general observations all around. But on that day, I remember that I turned my head completely upward and I saw an object I couldn't identify. I saw a structure. At first sight, it looked like a mass, white and enormous.
Para dar una referencia en tamaño, probablemente estaría en el orden del tamaño.
To give you an idea of how large it was like two jets put together. It was huge.
Entonces, yo ya estaba.
At the time, I was already interested in phenomena discovered in the sky.
Ya tenía mi cámara de video, tenía yo esta cámara de fotografías.
I had my video camera and tripod in hand, and I began to film the object.
Al hacer acercamientos con la cámara de video, me di cuenta que la estructura se movía, que no era una cosa que flotaba.
Moving closer with my video camera, I realized that the structure was moving, that it wasn't simply floating. It was twisting, writhing. It contracted and expanded. And when I saw that it was beginning to expel spheres, it was clear to me that something absolutely incredible was happening.
Entonces dije, bueno,
so I asked myself, what else can I do? I thought that photographs could be a tremendously important support, and so I took some. I remember that I took about 24 photographs.
The high-definition images that Gila obtained mark an important breakthrough in the study of these spectacular unidentified structures.
When I downloaded the photos to my computer, I realized that the structure appeared to be formed by thousands or hundreds of thousands of segments. It also had colored outer spheres. I'll be honest, at first I thought it might be a spectacular bunch of balloons. I talked about it with Jaime Maussan. I went to his office, and as soon as he saw what I had filmed, without having the slightest idea what it was, he said, "Arturo, what you've captured here is absolutely spectacular." There were those who were skeptical, whose unfounded argument was that they could be balloons. So Jaime Maussan immediately phoned a very well-known performer here in Mexico City, who uses the largest balloons in production.
Llegó a la oficina, vio las imágenes digitales y dijo, estos no son globos. Dice,
When he arrived at the office and saw the images, he said, "These aren't balloons, and even if they were balloons, a structure like this would require at least 57,000 balloons, possibly more."
Y además, ¿cómo podrían armarse? ¿Cómo podría armarse esa estructura?
How could you possibly create a structure with 57,000 balloons without any gas escapes? And how could you let it fly upwards?
Y además, se requeriría un permiso especial porque una estructura de ese tamaño ya necesita permiso para estar flotando.
Furthermore, you'd need a special permit, because a structure of that size needs a permit to fly, especially because in that particular area it was very close to flight paths used by airplanes to turn into the airport.
Para mí, ese fue el parteaguas. Ese Ebani madre.
To me, that was a breakthrough. The Mother Ibani, as I call it, the mothership.
The acronym IBANI stands in Spanish for Unidentified Aerial Biological Entity. And since Gila photographed them in high definition, sightings of IBANIs have been increasingly frequent.
Los movimientos de estos objetos son realmente muy orgánicos. O sea, a mí me
The movements of these objects seems to be organic.
¿Cómo se mueve una serpiente o cómo se mueve una oruga? O cómo
They remind us of a living being.
Bueno, es exactamente la misma manera en que se mueven. ¿Por qué se mueven así? No lo sé. Quizá es su manera de navegar o de estar o de mantenerse.
Maybe this is how they maintain stability in the sky.
Realmente no sé por qué se mueven de la misma manera que ocurre en la Tierra con estos organismos. Por lo tanto, los hemos considerado entidades biológicas.
We've called them Unidentified Aerial Biological Entities, or IBANI. And this biological aspect is the most important thing.
Lo más importante, porque se manifiestan como si estuvieran vivos.
They appear to be alive.
No sé si lo están o no,
I don't know if they are or not, but that's the sense you get when you see them on film. We do know that when we see an IBANI, we'll see spheres afterwards, which may show that there's some connection.
These features become even more evident in the videos made by Arturo Robles Gila since then. The forms and behavior of these anomalous entities seem to be writing the most incredible chapter in the study of unidentified flying objects.
Un Ebani es una entidad de tipo
An IBANI is a tubular-type entity that is also elastic. It's capable of twisting and writhing movements. It can move vertically and horizontally. It doesn't need engines to fly. It doesn't make any noise. And it doesn't leave a wake.
Tienen un propósito perfectamente específico de su aparición, que por supuesto saben que yo los estoy observando e inclusive grabando. El propósito específico que tienen los Ebanis es de...
The IBANIs appear to have a specific activity, expelling countless spheres into the atmosphere. On some occasions, they have moved from the place where they ordinarily appear and come towards this area. It's as if they wanted to be seen, to be observed with greater precision. Thanks to my work as a photographer, this has enabled me to create videos that I believe are without precedent, even on an international level.
The videos made by the vigilantes are just a small part of the large amount of footage showing the continuous activity of unidentified flying objects in the skies of our planet. The two most common questions are always the same, no matter where the phenomena are sighted. What are those objects in the sky? And should we be afraid of them? Giorgio Bongiovanni is one of the Italian scholars following the wave of sightings in Mexico very closely.
The claims of ordinary citizens, military personnel, astronauts and scientists, and the analyses performed on a remarkable amount of photographic and video materials, including the testimony of contactees, whose experience has been proven to be real after several years.
Ci dicono che probabilmente siamo visitati da esseri provenienti dal cosmo.
They all show that it's likely we're being visited by beings from space. They are passive, unaggressive visits, more concentrated in Latin America and in Mexico than in other parts of the world. But they occur all over the planet. This is happening in a period in which humanity is going through a difficult moment in its evolution. I believe that if clear, direct contact were to occur with these civilizations, it would lead to a truly profound Copernican revolution for us. I think that humanity could solve the serious problems in terms of social, political, economic, and environmental justice, which are causing us to risk self-destruction. It would definitely be a new impulse for science and religion. It would bring about the end of the dogmatisms and dangerous fanaticism at the basis of many of today's wars.
In fact, over many years of sightings, the UFO phenomenon has never been accompanied by any signs of aggression. One thing is certain: Mexico seems to play a central role in this saga that borders on science fiction. And the reason why is still a mystery. Perhaps the only clue is an ancient Mayan prophecy that tells of an encounter with the men of the stars. An encounter that would have begun in 1991 and may end in the year 2012. All we can do is wait, with our eyes on the heavens. The sightings continue. An increasing number of unidentified flying objects are captured on film each year in every part of the planet. And each year, incredible new forms are discovered. The images which have been gathered show light spheres, metallic spheres, iridescent spheres, alone, in pairs, in small groups, in squadrons of hundreds of objects, or thousands of them clustered together in a single spectacular flying structure. And then there are mysterious snake-like phenomena, invisible flying objects that only appear in infrared vision, and more, all in the extensive archives now available to scholars. Studies of these extraordinary documents could bring us closer to understanding the enigma of UFOs, one of the most fascinating mysteries of our time. The appearance of unidentified aerial biological entities, or EBANI, is one of the most surprising breakthroughs in the history of unidentified flying objects. The term EBANI stands for Unidentified Aerial Biological Entity in Spanish, and it was coined by Mexican researcher and journalist Jaime Maussan. One of these entities was captured in a video and photos by Arturo Robles Gila on the morning of the 27th of October 2004. In Gila's opinion, this particular entity constitutes a true breakthrough in UFO apparitions and a new enigmatic puzzle for scholars. Until that fateful morning, very little was known about these structures, in part due to the rarity of available videos, and the fact that the images didn't have enough definition to be interpreted properly. The video, and in particular the extraordinary photos that Arturo Robles Gila managed to take on the 27th of October 2004, clearly show that the EBANI is a structure formed by thousands of clustered spheres. A sort of aircraft carrier, the function of which seems to be to transport and expel these spheres into our atmosphere. The reason why this should happen is completely unknown. It's a phenomenon that's difficult to catalogue and explain, even for mainstream science.
Hasta hoy, los científicos no
Scientists have only been able to provide one answer so far.
Estamos confrontando un fenómeno anómalo.
We're looking at an anomalous phenomenon that is classified in neither micro nor macrobiology.
From an observation of the photos taken by Gila, we can clearly see the structure is formed of translucent spheres in 3 different colors: red, white, and blue. Until that moment, only one video had shown a transparent sphere in flight. It too had been recorded in Mexico by Javier Guevara in 2002. At the time, however, the origin of this new kind of sphere was unknown. The sphere's trajectory is linear, and its speed is fairly sustained, indicating that it has its own propulsion system. But the nature of the system that enables such an object to fly remains a mystery. Its transparency and the lack of any visible technological apparatus cannot be compared to any known or imaginable technology. Something we could not have achieved with previous UFO sightings. After the video of the 27th of October 2004, Gila identified and recorded the flight of other similar spheres on film and in photographs. This transparent sphere was photographed at low altitude in 2005. Gila recorded this video while he attended a Mayan ceremony in the area called Cerro de la Estrella, or Star Mountain. This site in the federal district of the city of Mexico is believed to be magic and sacred, and many UFOs have been sighted here.
Y bueno, pues al llegar inmediatamente, mi cuñada ubicó en una posición cenital a un objeto.
As soon as we arrived, my sister-in-law noticed a large, translucent object, and I began to film it. We were all quite surprised that it could happen in that place.
But Gila came upon his most spectacular scoop on the 28th of January 2005. His video shows an entire flotilla composed of these iridescent spheres. The spheres dance elegantly in the sky, quite unlike anything that had been filmed up to that time. In the pictures, we can clearly see the various colors of the shining spheres. The colors are even clearer than in the video. The images clearly show the same kind of spheres that made up the Ibani photographed on the 27th of October 2004. Thus, according to Gila, this video may confirm that the mysterious aerial biological entities would continue to deposit spheres into the skies over Mexico City. But the phenomenon has further surprises in store for us.
Después de ese encuentro visual con esta enorme entidad de...
After the enormous entity was sighted in 2004, others began to appear, but they weren't the same.
Que eran distintas, que no se parecían a la primera, pero
they didn't look like the first one, although they showed the same type of behavior during the flight.
Entonces empecé a, conforme fui captando a estas entidades, empecé a darme cuenta que no nada más eran blancos, sino había...
Once I had sighted these entities, I began to realize that they weren't just white, and there wasn't just one type of Ibani, but other types of different colors, with different designs on their surface, and with a different way of moving.
The photos taken by Arturo Robles Gila on the 14th of May 2006 are a clear example of the variety of ebanis. These ebani are brightly colored and have a helical tubular structure which is completely different from the cluster of spheres spotted in October 2004.
Se trata de estructuras que están formadas por un sinnúmero de...
These structures are made up of a number of helical tubes, which makes the whole thing even more intriguing.
Más intrigante y comprensible a la vez.
It might make sense, considering the difference between a structure with rectilinear tubes and one with helical tubes. So why helical? Because a helical structure, with the same diameter, obviously, has a larger storage capacity for the spheres inside it. It can contain hundreds of spheres, which they then expel into our atmosphere.
When looking at this new photographic material, many skeptics think that these are only colorful balloons.
Con respecto a los ebanis de colores, yo entiendo el escepticismo de las gentes.
I can understand the skepticism about the colored ebani, the people who think that they are structures made of balloons.
Pero afortunadamente, yo no solamente me remito a usar la cámara de video.
Luckily, I'm never satisfied with just using video cameras to film them.
Si lo vemos en términos técnicos,
seen in technical terms, video cameras have a resolution of 640 by 780 pixels. And at best, we'll get a resolution of 520 lines. That's why I also take photographs. Photos go deeper, because they allow us to see more detail.
Y la fotografía ha venido a demostrar de manera contundente y sin una forma.
And photos have demonstrated in an unequivocal way that these are not structures made of balloons.
Y los escépticos que han pretendido
Skeptics have tried to discredit this phenomenon, but their claim that these are garlands of balloons is completely unfounded.
No tienen una fotografía de alta resolución.
They don't have a single high-resolution photograph. They don't have photos taken with high-sensitivity apochromatic lenses. Their claims are based solely on the color of these structures.
But Robles Gila isn't the only one to have filmed the ebani. The phenomenon began to spread, and these entities were sighted and filmed by others too, both in Mexico and in other parts of the world. This black ebani, filmed in the skies over Los Angeles, is of remarkable interest. On one of its ends, we can clearly see a blinking light. The mystery surrounding their true nature thus gains a new element, which had been unknown up to this time. Once again, Gila amazes us with his material. On the 18th of March 2007, he recorded a new video and experienced an unprecedented event. In his video, we get a real impression that the ebani is a live creature.
En esa fecha del 18 de marzo, uno de estos ebanis se dejó venir para acá, pasando a baja altura.
On the 18th of March, an ebani was moving towards us, flying low.
Le pude hacer una grabación a detalle verdaderamente impresionante.
I filmed the object passing over my head. I was able to film it with truly amazing detail.
Esta área tiene dos secciones.
This terrace has two levels, and we're on the lower part.
Se fue para el Ajusco, para la zona sur.
I climbed to the top part because it was going towards the Ajusco area, southwards. And by then I was satisfied with the close-up images I'd got.
Subí ya sin cámara, que fue, reconozco que fue una experiencia negativa no haber tenido la cámara.
So I went up without my video camera, and I realize now that it was a mistake not to have brought it with me. Once the Ebani arrived, making its usual twisting movements, it suddenly stopped, straightened itself, and flew off at an astonishing speed towards the Santa Fe area, arriving there in just a few seconds.
A partir de ahí me quedó muy claro de que lo que pensábamos que meramente eran gusanos voladores son auténticas naves que pueden.
From that moment, it was clear to me that this wasn't just some kind of flying snake, but a real aircraft, capable of traveling and moving at incredible speeds, much faster than any commercial or military aircraft.
Arturo Robles Giles' story seems to confirm that the Ebanis cannot be a mass formed of mere balloons. The images show an autonomous flight mechanism, an unexplainable propulsion system, as unexplainable as the system that expels its spheres into the atmosphere.
Estas entidades, los Ebanis,
the Ebanis have their own source of energy.
En las grabaciones se nota, sobre todo los que son claros, que brillan demasiado, muchísimo, tienen un brillo espectacular o un brillo especular.
In the videos, especially the ones with the sharpest images, we can see that they glow, that they are spectacularly bright.
Tienen su propia luz, los de colores.
And I'm not talking about the reflection of solar rays of the sunlight. They have their own luminosity. It's the same with the colored ones. There are also translucent Ebanis, which is even more surprising. And they can camouflage themselves at will, become invisible and not perceptible to the human eye.
In the video of the 1st of July 2007 too, we get a remarkable sense of the biological nature of the Ebanis. The entity moves in a continuous fashion, and the video clearly shows its helical structure. The biological entities also seem to appear in groups. In 2005, Jesus Lomeli had already filmed 3 entities together. Later, Gila also recorded videos and took photos showing multiple biological entities. But the most striking material, showing an entire flotilla of Ebanis, was recorded by Miguel Angel Chavez in Mexico City. In the videos recorded on the 22nd and 23rd of September 2007, we can clearly see Ebanis of various colors hovering in the sky and moving in their characteristic way. The entities move in a continuous fashion, and they show a spectacular variety of colors. What should we make of this phenomenon? What might we feel when observing it in person?
La presencia de los Ebanis, sobre todo la incidencia tan grande que hay aquí en la Ciudad de México.
The presence of Ebanis, the density of their numbers, especially here in Mexico City, has increased substantially in the last 10 years.
No se ha visto en ningún momento que haya habido alguna abducción, que haya habido algún ataque.
And yet, we haven't seen a single abduction or attack. Nothing of the sort has happened.
Nos vienen a ayudar.
I believe that these presences come to help us. This is my understanding, my feeling about the Ebanis.
Coquis es un Ebani. Está escupiendo esferas. Está echando esferas, Mina. Mina está echando esferas.
The aerial biological entities seem to be connected to the presence of spheres in the skies over our planet. And their activity also seems to have increased over the course of recent years. Alone, in pairs, or in flotillas of varying number, they're being increasingly captured on film. However, they've only been seen in their metallic form a few times, as in this video recorded by Arturo Robles Gile. At the same time, videos of flotillas formed of metal spheres are rarer than those formed of light spheres. In Flavio Alcantara's video, we see a dark Ibane, and nearby a similarly dark flying sphere. The connection between Ibane and spheres has rarely been revealed so clearly as in the sighting by Arturo Robles Gile of the 27th of October 2004. But there are other images in which the two phenomena appear together. In the first video, we see the Ibane looking like it's closed in on itself, moving independently of the spheres surrounding it. In this case too, this autonomous movement confirms that these are not balls or balloons. In the second film, we can clearly see the Ibane twist and change form, while a remarkable number of white spheres move around it. We can make out spheres which are less visible, which give a better perception of the flotilla's depth in the sky. This elegant and majestic entity has now been flying over our cities with increasing frequency. Just a few meters seem to separate humanity from an extraordinary and unexplainable phenomenon.
El fenómeno de los objetos voladores mal llamado ovnis.
The phenomenon of the flying objects, incorrectly termed UFOs, exists. It's real.
Es tanta las evidencias que tenemos y
I can confirm this based on the amount of evidence we have and the proof I've seen.
No nada más las mías propias, sino la de mis compañeros y la
Not just my evidence, but also the evidence produced by my colleagues and others outside Mexico. We receive material from all over Mexico, and luckily, I get direct access to it. I'm the one who examines and selects the material. The UFO phenomenon in both Mexico and throughout the world is real. It exists.
Demetrio Feria's statements are supported by the incredible number of videos he has recorded up to the present, and by the incredible technological abilities that the flying objects seem to possess.
Hasta ahorita
He tenido la oportunidad de grabar cerca de 400 videos.
So far, I've been able to record about 400 videos in the 16 years I've been studying this phenomenon.
El video que yo tengo, el que me ha impresionado más, es de una esfera.
Of the videos I've made, the one that stood out the most is the one of a sphere that I filmed from my house with an infrared lens. It's a little sphere which couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but it was in the sky. These objects are in the air. They live with us.
Esa esfera baja y de cero velocidad.
The sphere comes down and slows down until it almost stops. Then it flies off at an incredible speed. On several occasions, I've been able to film objects flying at a phenomenal speed. I have many such videos. Their speed amazes me.
On the 5th of November 2006, Demetrio Feria used an infrared lens applied to his video camera to film once again a sphere darting around at very high speed.
Cámara estable.
Can the remarkable movements of the sphere filmed by the vigilante be called accidental? Its speed, the angle at which it flies, its ability to make itself invisible and then visible, which is only discernible through the use of infrared lenses, puts these craft beyond our current technical and scientific knowledge. The extraordinary claims thus far presented seem to suggest that the UFO phenomenon could truly be the product of intelligent beings seeking contact. Some people think of the words of an ancient Mayan prophecy that pointed to our time as the period in which humanity was to encounter the lords from the stars. And according to some, the video of 7 light spheres forming a perfect cross, recorded by Steve Burns on the 14th of August 2005 in the skies above Florida, may be a message to be deciphered.
El video de la cruz que fue
The video of the cross was recorded in St. Petersburg, Florida, on Sunday the 14th of August. We know that Mr. Steve Burns filmed it. We have analyzed the video and verified that it isn't computer-generated, and thus it's a truly exceptional document. The video was made 15 days before the arrival of Hurricane Katrina.
Anuncia ya el inicio de un proceso final que quizá culminará en los
It appears to announce the beginning of a final process that could come to an end in the next few years.
Los grandes peligros que estamos confrontando.
We're seeing great changes on Earth, such as changes in climate. We're facing seriously dangerous situations. Global warming and continually increasing solar activity are factors that could cause huge changes in the next few years. I think it's a kind of warning, an indication of what might come to pass. That's why I see this as a very important sign, a very important video.
There are those who are anxiously waiting for the year 2012, the moment of change that the Maya had predicted centuries ago. It could represent the beginning of a new era of peace for humanity.
Io direi che I segni ci sono e questo contatto.
I'd say that the signs are there, and this massive contact between man and extraterrestrials will be the sign of a new era.
Voglio precisare che, e voglio anche dire, secondo
To be precise, and I also want to say that, in my opinion, this presence is peaceful. There's no invasion. There will be no wars between men and extraterrestrials.
Perché queste civiltà
Because these civilizations are obviously much more advanced than us, both scientifically and technologically. But this goes hand in hand with ethical and spiritual progress. Therefore, any contact will be peaceful.
Could the extraordinary flying objects shown in these videos be a sign of this coming visit? Will there really be direct contact in the future? These questions are still unanswered. But each day, it seems we come closer to understanding the enigma of UFOs, one of the most fascinating mysteries of our time.
After the wave of sightings in the 90s, from 2000 onwards, the activity of the mysterious flying spheres has continued. Witnesses with cameras and video cameras have continued to record them. Are they extraterrestrial probes? Are we close to contact? An answer could come from the study of the material available to us. An answer that could change our vision of the cosmos and of ourselves. The flying spheres, an enigma that leads us into the future. The photographic and filmed evidence on the spheres shows that they can operate in any environment. The documentation from 2000 onwards provides further undeniable evidence. Often, the spheres are seen close to aircraft routes. These photographs taken by the vigilantes Fausto Avaroa and Arturo Robes Gil in Mexico City are an example. Video cameras were also able to record the facts. We can see it in this video by Arturo Robes Gil in Mexico City. In the film, we can clearly see that the flying spheres are not balloons released into the air. In fact, they are not affected at all by the strong turbulence caused by the passing planes.
Del año 2000 al 2008 han pasado 8 años. Y lo que sí he notado.
From 2000 to 2008, already 8 years have passed. I noticed that as time passes by, I've been filming entities and crafts that not only are amazing,
no solo extraordinarias, sino que nos llevan a una enorme reflexión.
But even lead the whole humanity and myself to deeply reflect and question us. Are we visited? Are any beings coming from the stars visiting us?
The deliberate movement of these spherical flying objects is clear from these extraordinary images. We can see a metallic sphere slow down and almost stop to let a plane that was crossing its route pass by. Once the plane has passed, the sphere once again starts to move in a more jerky way. These continual changes in speed almost seem to be a demonstration for the benefit of Gil's camera. In this other video by Arturo Robles Gil, we can see another example of the incredible technical skill of the spheres. At times, the spheres follow the planes. The dynamics of the film seem to indicate that the people on board don't realize what is happening. The people who study these phenomena don't really know what these spheres are, what they're for, or who made them. But it is obvious that whoever it is, they are increasingly less interested in hiding them.
Estas gentes, que sean las que sean, se están viniendo.
I think that these beings, whoever they are, show themselves all the time. We often see them.
Eso nos está enseñando.
This is probably because they are teaching us to become accustomed to their presence, not to be afraid.
Al contrario, yo creo que se están dejando ver para.
On the contrary, I believe that they show themselves so that soon, perhaps quite soon,
En no mucho tiempo se haga un contacto.
there will be a direct contact and they will be able to show themselves more clearly.
As we can see from the images, at times the objects are bright and luminous, at other times they are metallic and opaque. This is clear evidence of their multiform nature, the manifestation of a technology that is still beyond our understanding. These photos, taken in Mexico, show a group of metallic spheres in flight. They are amongst the clearest pictures ever taken. The author is the engineer Franklin Rojas, and the photos were taken in 2006. The similarity with the spheres photographed by the Hispanic-American contactee Paul Villa in New Mexico in 1966 is extraordinary. Curiously, exactly 40 years have passed between the two series of photos. The movement of this sphere is another clear example of the ease with which they maneuver in flight. It's difficult to say that the object is a balloon. The difference in the movement is obvious. Its flight is controlled and not caused by the wind. When it stops almost completely, it's even more difficult to say that. When it's filmed at the same time as balloons, the difference is even more evident. Salvador Guerrero has been a vigilante for many years, and he is the author of numerous very important films, which are now part of the history of the UFO phenomenon.
Y es una satisfacción.
Why do I enjoy it? Not because I want to be the best, but one of the many people who have proof of the UFO phenomenon,
Que está la expectativa.
who are waiting for the UFO to show themselves. There are people who film birds, who film hurricanes, and people who film UFO, unidentified objects.
Often the spheres appear in formations, sometimes numerous, and it was Salvador Guerrero who filmed this document, 6 spheres in a J shape flying over Mexico City.
When I come across these objects, it is very exciting for me to be able to film them. Not only to talk about them, but to be able to record them on video using modern technology.
On June the 24th, 2005, in the town of Jalapa, in the Veracruz region of Mexico, the governor, Don Fidel Herrera Beltran, is about to take part in an official ceremony. Policemen, journalists, and the public are all present. Suddenly, above them, they see the spheres of light. The governor also sees them and shouts, "It's the Martians!" Certainly, amongst the phenomena linked to the spheres, one of the most spectacular is the flotillas. The films by Arturo Robles Gil are undeniable evidence. In his video taken on the 21st of September 2007, The presence of clouds and the zoomed images give even more the perception of the background where the incredible sighting is taking place. The formations continue to appear. There are more and more of them, and they are increasingly frequent. Hill carries on filming in a punctual and constant way, thus proving that the phenomenon is continuous. This event is now evident in various parts of the world. Italy is also overflown by these fascinating squadrons of flying spheres. One of the most prolific authors of films is the Tuscan Antonio Urzi, who from a young age seemed to be under the attention of these mysterious means of non-terrestrial aviation. Urzi has shot many films of flying saucers, but his exceptional video repertoire also contains spheres and flotillas. A contactee case that is attracting the attention of the main researchers and international media. These are a few images of flotillas that Urzi filmed in Italy. But the most striking video that he caught was on the 4th of September 2009 in downtown Milan, near the famous Alla Scala theatre. He sighted a not-so-large flotilla flying over the buildings. Despite many people passing by, no one really looked up or stopped by to see what was happening. Fortunately, after a few minutes, a cameraman of Rai region Lombardy passed by. Antonio managed to grab his attention, so the exceptional event was also filmed by the professional camera of the Rai operator.
C'è la flotilla, filmo con la telecamera. Corri, vieni qua, ci sono tutte le sfere come in Messico. Vai laggiù sul punto là. Corri. Vedi? Ce la fai a vedere?
It was peculiar and self-explanatory, the fact that a girl stooped to pass below the camera operator without showing the slightest interest in the event happening. Antonio eventually also shot the street where the event occurred. The contactees have often said that the flying spheres are remote-controlled survey probes that also have controls and monitoring equipment for flying saucers.
El fenómeno de las esferas es
The phenomenon of spheres is strictly connected with the unidentified flying objects.
Tenemos videos, incluso en Italia, Antonio Urzi.
In Italy, Antonio Urzi filmed unidentified flying objects,
donde pueden ver esferas,
in which we can see spheres alongside these spaceships.
In the film that Urzi took on December the 3rd, 2008, at a certain point, we can clearly see these spheres alongside what is obviously a flying saucer. It's a dark color, which makes us think it must be metallic. It's not the first time that Urzi has recorded this phenomenon. In June 2004, he filmed a sphere near a silvery disc. Urzi has also filmed single flying spheres. In February 2009, Urzi went to Nevada, to the town of Laughlin, as guest of an international UFO congress. An event that lasts an entire week and that every year brings together the leading world experts on UFOs and related phenomena. On the morning of the 27th of February, Antonio and his wife Simona sighted and filmed a white sphere flying right above the convention center where the Congress was taking place. It is a rather rare occurrence that these objects show themselves in places where there are events dedicated to them.
È fermo, eh? Guarda, l'oggetto. È andato via subito. Perché no... Sì.
But Urtsi's contact experience is so exceptional that the happening took place again a few months later. In June 2009, in fact, Antonio was in Istanbul, Turkey, again as guest of an international UFO congress. During the event, he sighted a large sphere of light and started filming. His cries attracted many people from the audience that were listening to the speakers of the congress. Thus, dozens of people witnessed Urtsi's sighting. This fact had such a large impact that it attracted the attention of Turkish media, who made many reports of the event. Before Turkey, Antonio had already shot other films of flying spheres. This video was taken on May the 24th, 2009. The sphere is flying over the blocks of flats in Cinisello, Balsamo. Just when it goes out of sight, Antonio, his wife Simona, and her little sister run to another window of the flat to be able to observe it a little longer.
Questo è bello, eh? Hai visto che roba?
Ah, l'ho preso.
Urtsi follows the sphere until it disappears into the distance.
Faccio il frame la differenza con l'aereo.
The next images of an airplane show the obvious difference between the two vehicles. In July 2009, Urtsi was in Argentina for a series of conferences. During a visit to Capilla del Monte, an area where UFOs are often seen, he filmed this sphere with unusual characteristics.
È una palla grandissima, bella. Guarda.
Ah, ce l'ho visto.
Bueno.
His wife Simona and other friends are with him. The film becomes even more interesting when the sphere goes behind the bushes. At the end of the video, Urtsi also films the other witnesses.
Mira. Mira dietro, Simo, è fantastico. No, è muy linda, eh? È una palla grossa, enorme, eh? Fermi? Los testigos.
Once, Urtsi came back to Italy on July the 20th, 2009, during a visit to his family in Toscana. He films again a flying sphere overflying the skies.
Hemos observado también, por ejemplo, cuando hay flotillas, cuando hay...
We also observed that in flotillas with hundreds or thousands of objects, when they are very close one to each other, They move in a swinging way, as if connected by a magnetic force. We've seen these spheres moving forward, thousands of them, all at the same time and following the same direction. We sighted them going into the clouds.
Las hemos observado, pues realmente incluso de acuerdo al testimonio de...
According to several witnesses, they've been sighted even inside homes.
Todo ello me hace pensar.
All this makes me think about it as a phenomenon to investigate.
Me parece a mí que no son tripuladas.
It seems to me that these spheres have no pilot on board. I believe they are used sometimes individually, sometimes in groups, to make observations and specific investigations.
The appearance of the EBANIs, which is the Spanish acronym of Unidentified Aerial Biological Entities, the incredible snake-like flying objects, has complicated the incredible phenomenon of flying spheres even further. The first sightings date from the 90s. Since the year 2000, they have continued to appear, giving the scholars a really difficult problem to solve and, above all, to accept. In fact, the phenomenon is completely beyond our recognized parameters for aircraft technology. With the EBANIs, the boundaries between biological nature and technological nature seem to blend.
Which is to say that it behaves as if it were a living being.
Se mueven de manera orgánica.
These EBANIs move as if they were enormous worms in an organic way. There are some really exceptional films of these objects.
In August 2007, Arturo Robles Hill filmed a spectacular EBANI as it emitted the spheres. As the object moves into the clouds, we can see how high it is, and consequently, just how huge it is. An EBANI of the same color was filmed again in Mexico by Vianney Lopez on the 4th of October 2009 in the city of Guadalajara. You can clearly outline the EBANI moving within the clouds. Hill too has filmed these serpent-shaped objects literally entering inside the clouds. In this film, dated the 5th of August 2007, there are even 2 EBANIs. Once again, on November the 17th, 2008, Hill filmed another EBANI emitting spheres. This time, the apparatus is an irregular shape, and it clearly shows the polyhedric and multiform nature of these flying biological entities. These films suggest that the EBANIs are a sort of aircraft carrier that transports the spheres.
Pienso que estos cuerpos enormes de gusanos.
I think that these enormous bodies, like snakes, are the way in which the spheres are transported and moved around.
Es mucho más fácil poder mover a un centenar o...
It's much easier to move hundreds or thousands of spheres in a solid, closed body rather than individually.
Entonces, yo pienso que...
So, I think that the EBANIs are the origin of the phenomenon of the flotillas and of the flying spheres themselves.
Often, the EBANIs are accompanied by just one sphere that the researchers call the century.
En diferentes ocasiones han sido grabadas juntas.
In several occasions, the EBANIs and spheres have been filmed together, and we also observed that in many cases they are accompanied by a great sphere, a royal craft that's always there. I don't know why, but we can see it in many videos.
At other times, they appear together with the flotillas, as we can see in this Mexican film from 2007. We can see the phenomena progressively taking shape in this film by the Mexican Octavio Fernandez. Octavio also filmed these abanis in various colors. Together with Hill's footage, the abanis filmed by Fernandez are among the most numerous in the world. At times, the abanis, like the spheres, cross the routes of aircraft.
Abro mi toma. Mira, el avión pasó cerca. ¿Te diste cuenta? Más al frente.
Considering the incredulity and the amazement of the researchers themselves, it is understandable that the public thinks of the abanis as balloons floating through the air. Everything we've seen about the flying spheres already seems complex and incredible. But in May 2009, the Mexican skywatcher Alfredo Carrillo filmed a phenomenon that has never been seen before. All the objects are dark-colored, the witness is filming against the sun. But there are more surprises to come. The event is also being filmed at the same time by another witness, the Mexican Pedro Hernandez. Initially, Hernandez, just when he's filming an aircraft flying past, sees the same flying object that Carrillo has filmed, but with the sunlight at his back. So the objects are illuminated, and the video gives a better image of the spheres than we've ever seen before. Probably, Hernandez is closer to the phenomenon he is filming. The object starts to slow its spinning motion, and then the incredible scene continues. Slowly, a flotilla begins to form. When the film ends, Hernandez comments on the incredible scene he's just witnessed.
Here behind me there were UFOs moving around, really beautiful. They were yellow, they were really beautiful, and they were here, just behind me.
Comparing the two videos of Carrillo and Hernandez, we can clearly see that it really is the same phenomenon. The statements by witnesses, the investigations, the exceptional images leave little room for theories of fraud, mass hallucinations, or pranks. It is really difficult to think that the spheres are not real or the result of intelligent life.
Las esferas son un fenómeno inteligente, no me cabe la menor duda. Y nosotros hemos acumulado mucho.
The spheres are an intelligent phenomenon, I have no doubt, and we have accumulated lots of film where we can see this intelligent movement. They are part of a project that is even greater than they are. That's why we should believe that we are dealing with a phenomenon that shows the interest towards and the investigation upon us, human beings.
Perhaps one day, this reality will be accepted by the authorities, or perhaps it will be the phenomenon itself that forces us to accept it without waiting for human decisions. It wouldn't be the first time. In the past, events have changed human history. Will we be taken by surprise this time too? In South England, for a few decades, an incredible phenomenon has been taking place, fascinating and unsettling at the same time: the crop circles. The message transmitted by these fascinating figures could have a great value for humanity. What if it were a new attempt at communication? Such a theory is definitely revolutionary, but there are strong obstacles deriving from the skepticism that circulates around the crop circles phenomenon. Most people are convinced that the pictograms are man-made, a trick organized by groups of jokers. This is the case. Never mind if enormous figures and extremely complex drawings appear overnight. So far, the large amount of data and information gathered and documented brought no results. However, in 2007, something incredible and totally unexpected happened. An event that shook the scientific approach to the phenomenon, strongly rebounding the theory that it is not a human work, but rather a form of communication made by a non-terrestrial intelligence. Is it possible that an alien civilization is trying to talk to us? During the night of the 6th and 7th of July 2007, a researcher named Winston Keach placed a series of cameras on the hill above the East Field near Silbury Hill, an area in the south of England which has always been popular for the crop circle phenomenon. Other researchers joined Mr. Keach. Gary King, a lawyer very keen on this phenomenon, and his girlfriend Paula.
And at about 1:30 a.m. we went along to Knapp Hill. Arriving there, we met up with the cameraman that I'd met earlier in the day in the cafe, and he had a set of cameras with him on top of the hill, and he explained to me that he had some more cameras set up in his vehicle which he'd pulled through and parked on the hill overlooking Eastfield as well. When I got there, he told me that the two cameras that were in the car were infrared and visible light capabilities and very sensitive. Also, the cameras he had were on the hill with him was a still camera which had a long exposure, an image enhancing device, and also another very light sensitive camera. He showed us a scan of the field with the image enhancer, and we could see clearly at that time, about 1:35, that there were no formations in the field of Eastfield or the surrounding fields next to them. We sat there then until about 3 o'clock just chatting and talking, and then just after 3 there was a big white flash of light that completely encompassed the landscape. That reminded Wynne that he needed to go down to his vehicle and change the tapes over. So he went down to the vehicle, changed the tapes and came back. And we sat there then just talking for about 20 minutes further. And then just as some light creeped in, just as some clouds must have moved away, there was a very imperceptible shadow that we could see on Eastfield. So I asked Wynne to look through his camera on the hill, He opened the viewfinder and looked through it and then said to us, you better get up and look at this. And it was at that point, which was about 3:45 in the morning, that we discovered there was a very significant formation in East Field. He carried on filming. We waited for the light to come up some more, took pictures and danced around. We were very elated, and we waited until the light came up a little more, and then Paula and I drove down to the end of the field while Wynne continued filming, and he filmed us as being the first persons that walked into the formation at about 4:30. On later analysis of the footage that was taken in the car, there were two cameras running constantly all night from about 11 o'clock until 5 o'clock. So it completely covers the field. If any light would have been in that field, it would have been detected. And we've got cars and vehicles driving past at various times that are all logged, and the times of them are logged. So we know that the tapes are running for that period of time. There's about 16 hours of footage in total.
Some circles in the formation follow the uneven terrain and are deformed in order to appear perfectly round from above. A further evidence that indicates the inexplicable nature of crop circles.
Nobody could have been doing this formation. If there would have been 1/200th of a candle light of light in that field, these cameras would have picked it up. And plus, I feel that we would have seen it from the hill as well, because we were constantly maintaining an observation down on East Field. Quite apart from the logistical aspect of making the formation like this, the complexity, the size of the formation, the fact that the circles are ovals so that they look circular from the air.
However, there is more to be surprised about. When they watched the recorded tapes, Gary King and the others realized that the cameras had caught the beam of light that reminded Wynne to change the tape.
When we analysed those tapes, we found that the first visible signs of the formation through the lenses of those cameras was actually at 3:20 AM, and that the light flash that was picked up on the end of the first tape registered for 3.5 milliseconds as an EM pulse, which is very similar to a bolt of lightning. And it was 7 minutes after that at 3:20, that the first signs of the formation were picked up by the cameras in the car. But we again didn't see them until about 20 minutes after that. As far as I know, this is the only time that anything like this, where continuous footage, continuous tapes have been running all night and captured the field and eliminated any evidence of anybody being in there with any laser alignment measurement devices or lights of any kind. As far as I know, this is the best footage and most comprehensive footage available of when a crop circle takes.
A crop circle appeared in the space of one night. An incredible event caught by Winston Keach's cameras and witnessed by Gary King and Paula. Finally, this is the definite proof that crop circles have an alien origin. What happened in East Field on July the 7th, 2007 is bound to be remembered as one of the most significant events since the beginning of the phenomenon in the 70s. Moreover, another consideration is added to this. If the real origin of the crop circles were human, we would be facing a repeated act of vandalism against the owners of the fields in which the pictograms occur. But so far, no one has ever taken any legal action against unknown persons for the damages suffered. So the question arises, is it possible that the British farmers themselves may have the perception of the unusual and complex nature of the crop circles? Michael Glickman is one of the main historical investigators of the phenomenon. He tried several times to convince the owners of the fields on which the pictograms appeared to denounce the damage suffered to the authorities.
They're frightened. I've been to the farmers and I've said, here is a photograph of what you have got in your field. And they go, I don't want to see, don't show me this. They're scared.
In addition to the claims by Michael Glickman, the direct testimony of the owner of a field where in 2007 a pictogram appeared is particularly interesting.
I never saw anybody make it, and it appeared, I think, in the middle of the night. It's a real work of art, very precisely created and very accurately. And it was in a crop of wheat, which was flattened onto the ground, and it makes it very difficult to harvest it when it's like that. So I estimate that it was probably about an acre of wheat which was spoilt. When I first looked at it, it looked extremely disappointing. It just looked like a bit of vandalism, destruction. My first reaction was to prevent anybody from coming to see it, because I thought they would do a lot more damage by walking into the field and traipsing about in my crop. But a few people arrived and they were very persuasive, and so I allowed them to come in and have a look around. And they were all very nice people. I think the most interesting thing about the crop circle was the people who came to see it, actually. We had some extraordinary people, and they were all convinced that there was some outside power from outer space coming to create this thing. And it wasn't until we saw the photographs taken from the air that we realized what a beautiful thing it was. No, never forget. And luckily we've got lots of pictures. A bit disappointing to look at on the ground because you couldn't really see the formation, but the photographs taken from airplanes are absolutely amazing. And it was such a huge area, and it's very difficult to imagine how human beings could make that, because there would be so much measuring involved, and none of us can understand.
Not all farmers, though, were that keen. In August 2007, a formation had not been visited by anyone because of the violent opposition of the owner of the land. The farmer fiercely threw out anyone who approached his land with the intention to visit the pictogram, and harvested it a few hours after its appearance.
We've just been thrown out from the property in which the formation appeared, near the city of Marlborough. We came to this airfield to hire an ultralight aircraft and film the figure from the air, which will unfortunately disappear in a few hours. A figure over 100 meters across. A figure it has not been possible to investigate, but on the basis of what we have seen, it seems extraordinary. I hope that when we do fly over the area, the figure will still be there. Let's hope we're a little lucky.
Luckily, it was possible to photograph the circle before it was removed by the threshers. In fact, the wheat had not been harvested yet, and so the pictures show the figure imprinted in the field in all its beauty and harmony. It stands out as the circle is very close to the farm. Actually, it would have been virtually impossible to make that gigantic symbol at night, and especially without letting the owner of the field notice anything. For a few decades, the crop circles have been causing excitement, fascination, divisions, and curiosity. The simplest questions have not yet found an answer. Who produces these designs, and why? The answers of science and of hoaxes. Groups of counterfeiters who make pictograms are not sufficient. Too often, the most spectacular formations have appeared over one single night, maybe even in bad weather, such as the famous one of Milk Hill in 2001. The greatest pictogram ever appeared until then, consisting of 409 circles occupying an area of 90,000 square meters. Such events give even more credit to the theory of the non-human origin of the crop circles. A phenomenon that could really be the manifestation of a project concerning the entire human race? Charles Mallet, researcher for many years and owner of the Silent Circle Cafe, the most important meeting and information point for the scholars of this phenomenon, has no doubt about it.
For me, I'm personally 100% sure that elements of this phenomenon represent a direct interaction from somewhere else up here, and it seems to be connected with the Earth, with ourselves, our own metaphysical or spiritual development, the evolution of our species.
Once upon a time, there was a people who possessed a considerable knowledge. a civilization whose messages have been handed over to us through time. A people whose prophecies have impressively started to come true. The Mayas. The eternal charm of mystery encloses the deep knowledge of this ancient civilization, whose memory has been lost in the mists of time. Among the most important Mayan documents where their prophecies are reported, there is certainly the Dresden Code. This is one of the 3 existing codes which survived the destructive fury of the conquistadors. Called after the German city where it's kept, the Dresden Code is the most informative one. It contains forecasts anticipating with astonishing accuracy some astronomical phenomena and events that will take place even in the distant future. In this code is held one of the most impressive astronomical predictions of the Maya. In fact, they predicted centuries in advance, with an error of just a few seconds, the eclipse of the 11th of August 1991, one of the most spectacular of the last century that took place in Mexico. This eclipse is associated with a figure that represents death, sitting on a throne of bones. It symbolizes the old age, the era that is ending. The prediction or prophecy says, "Woe to you people of the earth, the end of the Jaguar nights will come, together with the beginning of a new era that will rise from the ashes of the previous one. It will be the time of the encounter with the lords of the stars." Therefore, the eclipse is considered by the Mayas as the starting point of the process bringing the end of the old era and the encounter with the masters from the stars. Could it mean the contact between humanity and an alien civilization coming from the cosmos? Will it be through this contact that mankind will live the new golden age anticipated by the Mayas?
On the 11th of August 1991, a disc-shaped unidentified object was sighted in the skies over Mexico City. It was the beginning of a long series of sightings by witnesses of an unprecedented wave of UFOs along the whole Mexican territory. Afterwards, incredible waves also occurred in other parts of the world, like Belgium and ex-USSR countries, increasing the general attention on the UFO phenomenon like never before.
And what about the crop circles? Remarkably, since that year, the circles started appearing with greater frequency, and the figures became more complex and fascinating. It was as if both phenomena obey the same command, as if they were part of the same project. Almost using the same language of the Mayan prophecy contained in the Dresden Code, the Lords of the Circles put a signature on the English fields by using a symbol that belongs to the Sumerian civilization. It is called Dinjir and appeared in 1992, incorporated into a pictogram representing the solar logos, which also means union of heaven and earth. The symbol Dinjir means the just people traveling on celestial ships of fire. Who are the just people, and what about the celestial ships of fire? Is it a coincidence that the Dinjir appears together with another symbol that indicates link, union between heaven and earth? The similarity with what was announced by the Mayas is extraordinary, but there is more. Why a Sumerian symbol and not a Mayan one? What is the connection between this symbol, the Dresden Code prophecy, and UFOs? The answer might come from the experience of an American policeman, Lonnie Zamora, on the 24th of April 1964, near the town of Socorro, New Mexico.
In 1964, New Mexico, the policeman Lonnie Zamora witnessed the landing of an object of unknown nature. He talked about it to his colleagues who arrived soon after the object had flown away. The ground was deeply embossed. That confirmed the landing of the object. On the side of the UFO, Zamora saw a particular symbol, a sort of arrow inside a semicircle. When his colleagues arrived a few minutes after the happening, the ground was still hot and the policeman was visibly shaken.
On the side of the ovoid UFO, was imprinted a symbol that Zamora would never forget, the Dingir. Incredibly, this symbol appeared again in the summer of 1999, inside a giant pictogram about 300 meters long. There were also, in greater numbers than the first time, the symbols of union between heaven and earth. But the connection between crop circles and what was announced by the prophecy of the Dresden Code regarding the Masters from the Stars is not just restricted to these occurrences. Clearer and far more important events started taking place in 2000. On the 13th of August 2000, near the Chilbolton Military Radio Telescope, appeared a beautiful crop circle that could not be deciphered. Its proximity to an installation supervised 24 hours a day makes it difficult, if not impossible, to think about a human origin. Its explanation arrived unexpectedly the year after. In fact, in the same field, on August 14th, 2001, a new pictogram appeared. This time, however, it was not the usual symbol. This is in fact a face with clear humanoid features, designed with the same technique used for the old black and white photos of newspapers. A set of points where the difference of width and distance between them creates the image. A technique never seen before in crop circles. By applying a graphic filter on the photo, more details become clear.
If we apply a Gaussian filter 6.6 pixels wide, you see how light and shadow are outlined, proving that that being was alive when the picture was shot or when they impressed this image into the wheat field.
Just 5 days later, on August the 19th, a few dozen meters away from the alien face, an even more shocking figure appeared. It seemed the reply to the binary code message transmitted by the Arecibo radio telescope in 1974. It was right in that year, in fact, that Frank Drake, scientist and director of Arecibo at the time, together with the famous astronomer Carl Sagan, tried to communicate with a group of stars identified as M13. It sent out a message of introduction of mankind to a hypothetical alien civilization, indicating data on our numerical system, on the basic atoms of terrestrial life, on the structure of human DNA, and of our solar system with the Earth's relative position. They also included data relative to the Arecibo radio telescope. According to calculations, the message should have taken 25,000 years to reach its destination, and the same again to receive a reply. A really long time, let alone the fact that no one could tell whether that group of stars really hosted a supposed alien civilization. These circumstances make even more startling the appearance of the Chilbolton pictogram. Is it possible that someone received our message and replied to it much earlier than expected?
We have the same numerical system with 0 and 1. Therefore, the answers are universal. The basic atoms of life are the same, but in their body there is also silicon. Then, where the chemistry of DNA is mentioned, we also notice the fact that all the components of our DNA are clearly identical to theirs. This shows that we come from the same universal principle. When they mention their genome, they tell us that they have 1,048,000 sequences more than us. This means that they are much more evolved than us, which is normal, since they have been able to achieve such a development. To prepare a similar message, they ought to have a greater evolution. Then they provide other details, telling us that they live in 2 planets and 4 moons, namely in 6 different worlds. And finally, they refer to the instrument used to send out this message. Surprisingly, we found that the figure representing this device appeared 1 year before in the same place. Thus, they notified that in the same place they would have given a new message. The way in which these beings speak to us needs to be carefully interpreted.
The elements involved in the Chilbolton pictograms are astonishing. Is this really the reply of an alien civilization? Is it fake or real? The Mayan Dresden Code announces that, starting from the 1991 eclipse, it has begun a process that will lead humanity to the encounter with the Lords of the Stars. Are these events part of it? 1 year after the Arecibo reply, exactly on the 15th of August 2002, in the fields of Crabwood Farm, west of Winchester, there appeared an even more amazing crop circle. It depicts an alien who holds a CD on which is carved a binary code message. This is the ASCII programming language for computers. Some researchers have decoded it.
This figure tells us several things, very interesting indeed. It tells us, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises.
Yo no sé si esto se dirige hacia lo que significa.
I don't know if this is related to what is, meaning global warming, or to wrong messages that they have given us, or if, on the other hand, it is directly related to the beginning of the war in Iraq. Given that this warning, this message, appeared in August 2002, then, in the same message it says, much pain but still time. Again, we can attribute this to both issues, either what was happening on Earth or the Iraqi war. Then it goes on to say, believe there is good out there, which is the most important phrase, because it tells us that God exists, it tells us that the good, the upright exist, that they are our friends. I reckon it is an optimistic message for that reason. And finally it tells us, the message is closing. We don't know if this means that the communication would end there. I definitely hope not.
The so-called alien face from Crabwood Farm has raised much controversy about its authenticity. Yet, after many years, nobody has shown it to be a fake, and no one has claimed its creation. The complexity of its realization, simulating the structure of a television frame, the three-dimensional effect of the figure, the difficulty of achieving the binary code in a spiral, as in real compact discs, are all elements that make the hoax theory very unlikely. There is also another important element emerging from the encoding of the message. Some statements remind us of the Mayan prophecies. The phrase, "there is good out there," confirms the very Mayan concept of a universe governed by firm laws of harmony. Much pain but still time seems to emphasize what was predicted by the prophecies on the years preceding the date of 2012. Finally, the conduit is closing seems a direct reference to the end of the cycle on the 21st of December 2012. Is it possible that the Mayas held knowledge coming from an alien civilization? This theory is definitely fascinating, and the data collected seem to corroborate it. Data supported by the extraordinary increase of unidentified flying object sightings all over the world. It is getting harder to deny the anomalous nature of this phenomenon. The message is definitely important for the future of humanity. In such difficult times of our history, it could be a means to help us in overcoming hardship. Will mankind appreciate its worth?